Hey Wargamers, welcome back to the channel, Wargaming.com. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Kevin.
And we are here to talk about classic BattleTech. And this is our series here on how to play classic BattleTech. This particular video talking about physical attacks. One of our favorite things. So we've got punching, kicking. Is there biting?
Clawing.
It's definitely clubbing.
Yeah.
It's definitely clubbing. And our favorite, of course, the Death from Above maneuver, the namesake of our channel.
Biggest differences between shooting and physical attacks. It's a separate phase, right? We talked about it before, but I'll bring it up again. Damage from shooting is already applied, so any effects like you're losing limbs or you've fallen down, things like that are going to happen before this physical attack phase. But once the physical attack phase comes, if you're able to punch, if you're able to kick and do whatever you need to do, you may make a physical attack. In general, you're going to need to be adjacent to your target or end up adjacent to your target through a different series of rules for each type of attack that we'll go through. But in general, you're going to apply rules similar to shooting, the Gator rules we talked about before, only this is slightly modified. We kind of made up our own acronym, PATO, where essentially instead of gunnery, the P in there represents the piloting skills. So you basically are going to do a difference of the attacker and target's piloting skills for pretty much all of these. Yep. But then you still apply your attack modifier for what type of move you made, whether you walked or you ran. You're going to apply the target's modifiers based on the distance they moved, and then there's always the other modifiers, right? Not necessarily cover, since you're generally going to be side by side, but there will be things like actuator damage or other effects that might cause a modifier in your attack.
Right. And the other thing is they use different location charts, right? So we talked about in the damage segment, you roll in a location, left arm, right. And when you're shooting, you have, a chance to hit basically the entire mech. Physical attacks are a little different, right? So when you're punching, it's basically waist up. And when you're kicking, you really only have a chance to hit the legs. And it will tell you in the rule book, which of these charts to use. Some of them still have an opportunity to hit everything, depending on what attack it is. And also if the mechs are on different elevations, right? So if you are a level up on a hill and you kick me, you can kick me right in the head. Right. So there's a lot of different things that can happen.
Or if they're prone for that matter.
Or if they're prone, right, yeah. So there's a lot of different things that come into play there. That again, that's all in the rule book. So
yeah. So let's talk about some of the attack types. Yeah. First and foremost, right, they can punch, right? Mechs can use their arms to punch with. You can punch with both arms. You can punch with one or both arms in the physical attack phase. Important things are, though, you won't be able to punch with an arm if you've fired a weapon on that arm in that previous shooting phase. If you fired with your left arm, you can only punch with your right arm. If you fire with both arms, you can't punch with either.
That's right.
So you can only execute one type of physical attack in the physical attack phase. So the selection of what physical attack you make is sort of based on what you did in shooting and maybe how you want to optimize your current situation and your target situation. But the punching essentially is going to apply some moderate damage, generally from the waist up if you're on level ground.
Yep.
And it's affected by the actuators you have in your arm. So if you're missing actuators or if they're damaged, it could affect your other modifier, whether your success chance to hit. In addition, it could affect the damage, right? If you have damaged actuators, the idea is you're going to do less impact in your punch, and so the damage is usually divided by half when you're missing actuators in that arm.
Right, and some mechs aren't even constructed, like the rifleman, has this goofy gun for an arm. And he's going to have a hard time punching, and they get like chopped, but they do less damage because they're missing those actuators. And again, those, you look at the critical sheet, right, the critical hit chart, and you can see, what actuators a mech has. I guess kicking is the other big one too, right? So punch, kick. Kick does twice as much damage as a punch, but you can punch twice. You can only kick once because obviously you can't
drop kick.
Right, you cannot. That's like a death from above.
Which should be pretty cool.
Which would be cool. So you only kick once. It does use the kick table again if you're on level ground. Some mechs do have leg-mounted weapons. It's a little more rare. But if you do fire the weapon mounted on that leg, you obviously cannot kick with it. Same type of rules apply. And the same deal with actuators, right? So if you've taken hip or leg or whatever actuator damage in a particular leg, that's going to influence the damage and the ability to hit. for that particular kick attack.
Yeah, and punches and kickers, they're sort of your vanilla
Your bread and
physical
butter.
attacks. There's more utility attacks like a push. Essentially, you're not going to be doing any damage, but if you succeed, you can displace the mech, right? So you could shove them off a cliff, for example, or shove them into another mech. There's some interesting things you can do there from a utility perspective with a push. There's also then physical weapons and clubbing. Or improvised weapons, which fall under clubbing.
Yeah.
Those essentially work just like punches, but the weapons will generally have their own to hit modifiers, their own damage values that can be greater or sometimes more advantageous than a punch. If they're wielding like an axe or a hatchet, for example, you can really carve up some other mechs.
Famous hatchetman.
Yeah. And then improvised clubbing is pretty cool because you could, say, grab a tree out of a forest. You could grab a girder out of ruins nearby.
Right.
You can use an arm that fell off. Like I mentioned before, if your left arm falls off your mech, you could grab it with your right arm and use that as an improvised club.
Yeah.
Apply a little more damage. It sometimes just adds a nice dramatic appeal too.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And the improvised weapons, I think they're destroyed once you use them. I don't know if the girders are. I know like trees explode once you whack somebody over the head with them.
Right, it's like a one-use
glass
cannon.
Exactly, but it is pretty cool. And one of my favorite physical attacks, of course, is charging. You can't shoot. You do have to declare this in the movement phase, right? And you have to basically have enough movement to get into the hex of your target, right? Yeah. So, if your target's 6 inches away, you need to have basically 6 inches to get, actually more than, right, to get into their target hex. And again, you declare that in the movement phase, so that means that you have to move after them, right? Because if you declare a charge against a target that can move, they're just going to move away, right? And then that charge is null and void. So they don't even let you declare a charge unless your target has already moved. And if you declare that charge, you can do catastrophic damage to somebody. Because,
quite literally.
Yeah, I mean, if you're an 80-ton mech and you've moved 6 hexes or 6 inches, you're doing 8 times 6 with 48 points of damage. And of course it spreads around a little bit, but I mean that's a lot of damage. You do take damage back, so it's always good to charge to bully the little guys in this scenario.
And an important note, when you apply damage at a high volume with any of the physical attacks, I believe they're going to be broken up in groupings of 5 damage apiece. So there will be a distribution when you do high damage.
Yep.
And our last and final type of physical attack, and our namesake, is the Death from Above.
Right, and the most complicated of all attacks.
And quite frankly, the most risky. So essentially, that's essentially when you're using your jump jets. So it requires jump jets on the mech. And you're essentially using your jump jets to ascend over the target and land on their head, or just try to crunch them and cause some. I guess that would be the drop kick.
That would be the drop kick. Yeah.
So it's extremely difficult to execute. There's a lot of modifiers involved and a lot of risk because you're essentially going to have to do a required pilot skill check.
Yep.
And if you hit the target, though, there's a big reward because they're going to take essentially like a punch-like attack, but times 3 on the damage.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to make a piloting check as well. But the real-time DFA shines, Death from Above, is when your target is prone because that damage automatically applies as if it were a rear hit.
Right.
So if there's a target on the ground, that's when you want to consider maybe this is the right time.
Yeah, and they haven't moved, so their their target modifier is very low, right? So you could definitely reap some benefits on that one.
So a lot of cool options of physical attacks, both just direct damage, some utility ones, and some interesting fluff ones, but based on the kind of loadout and move and jump capabilities of your mech.
Yeah, for sure. We definitely encourage check the rules in some of the more complicated ones like a DFA. There's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts. You can get shot out of the sky. There's a lot of crazy stuff that can happen. But physical attacks definitely add a neat dimension to the game, and also set battle mechs apart from like a tank or infantry or some of these other units in the BattleTech universe. But having said that, we'll do a little quick demo, show you some of the physical attacks, how they work. We'll keep it basic for you. And then, the next video coming up as we move to the end of the turn, we're getting close here. Next video is Heat.
We almost made it through one round.
We almost made it through a whole round of the game, much like real BattleTech. It takes a very long time. So next up is Heat, right? So stick around for that. And thanks again, and we'll catch you soon.